Welcome to the CFO Track podcast. I'm your host, Tom Hunter, and every week I'll be bringing you stories from some of Australia's best and brightest CFOs and the lessons they learnt along the way. My goal for the podcast is to provide learning and development opportunities for those wanting to get to the level of the guests on this show, but they just didn't have the access to those lessons otherwise. Let's get into it. On today's show, I'm speaking with Cale Bennett, the CFO of Technology One, an ASX 100 software business. Cale shares some fantastic insights from during his time with corporate travel management, where during COVID, they lost 90% of their revenue almost overnight. He also gives some really practical advice on how to stay calm during crisis management, how to make big decisions with imperfect information, and then why relying on your team is so important. I know you're going to enjoy this one, so here we go. Cale Bennett, welcome to the CFO Track podcast.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. How's a long weekend? What did you get up to?
Well, it's I'm in Queensland, so the weather is always perfect, and I went up the coast for the long weekend, which is really lovely.
It's in sunny coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Do you go there regularly?
As often as I can. So. Not as often as I'd like.
Yeah,
let's put it that way.
Nice, very good. Well, I've already given the listeners a bit of an intro to you, but I can never do it justice. So it'd be good to hear it from yourself, who you are, what you're doing at the minute, that kind of thing.
Cool. So my name's Cale Bennett. I am the CFO of Technology One. We are an ASX 100 technology company. We create an ERP up here in Brisbane for primarily for higher education and local government customers, both here in New Zealand and in the UK.
Yeah, nice. And so for Tech One specifically, so what's the headcount at the minute? Like where's the growth sitting?
Yeah, we're about 1,700 people.
Right.
And look, we grow pretty strong organically here in Australia and New Zealand. This is our home base. We're really the incumbent provider in the higher education and local government markets here in Australia. But in the UK, we're growing much faster, obviously off a smaller base, but it's really our growth engine. And over the last couple of years, we've really sort of hit that inflection point where it's become a bit of a self-sustaining operation over there, which is really exciting to see.
Yeah, nice. Well, we'll come back to that in a bit, but it'd be good to go back to the start first, because the whole idea is to tell the story behind the growth of your career. So what was it specifically that got you into finance? Was anything interesting that pointed you that way?
Yeah, look, I in the middle of my degree, I took a little bit of time off and to think about what I wanted to actually do. I was quite young when I started university. I was 16 when I finished school, and probably should have taken some time off at that point, but just sort of got into it. Realized halfway through that I really didn't know anything about anything. Took some time off and decided that financial markets was where my interest was, and so that's the sort of the path that I pursued early into finance in my career, the first sort of 10 or 15 years.
Finished high school at 16, or you just went to uni at 16?
No, I finished high school at 16,
and
then I went to uni the next year.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so what, uni at 17?
Yep.
Yeah,
I wasn't very good for my social life, I can tell you that much.
No, right. So, well, were you some sort of like teenage genius or something?
No. Actually, the true story is that I think I was pretty annoying as a kid, and my mum sent me to school early. So, that's the actual. And then it just sort of, I was very young when I started, so I was young when I finished.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. And what did you do at uni?
I did international finance.
Okay. Yeah, right. What steered you that way? Was it just an interest and you're good at it, or?
Yeah, it was really, I guess, maths was a strong point at school, and really trying to lean into that, into the financial markets side, which is kind of where I took most of my subjects, a bit of technology and a bit of maths.
Yeah. And that was the roles that you took out of uni as well, from memory.
Yeah, so I started in as an FX dealer, and then FX trading. It was kind of my space, and then moved into interest rates after that.
Yeah, okay. Is that as exciting as it sounds, getting into that?
Yeah, look, it was good fun.
Yeah.
it was good fun, and yeah, look, I can probably tell you some good stories about making and losing lots of money. Not for
Yeah.
myself, sadly, uh, but yeah, look, it was a really good and interesting sort of career path.
Mm.
Sort of back then, and I got to do some really interesting things and take a lot of responsibility really early. When
Mm.
I think back on on some of the early parts of my career, and some of the sort of the sums of money that I was managing is
Sure.
uh, yeah, I'm not sure why anyone gave me that much responsibility at that point, but anyway, them's the breaks.
Yeah.
And so yeah, look, it was interesting. I realized sort of in my late 20s that maybe I didn't want to do that
Sure.
forever, and so then I kind of began my sort of path out.
Yeah. Okay. What was it specifically that you didn't enjoy about it?
It wasn't anything that I didn't enjoy.
Okay,
I
right.
actually really loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. It was very consuming.
Mm.
And I was, maybe I'll put this softly, I was slightly less nicer person
Okay.
when I was younger. Um,
Yeah.
uh, my brain sort of moved in very, very short cycles, and I became very, very uh, impatient with people in life,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I recognize that probably wasn't a good thing.
Sure, sure. I think we all go through those stages of growth and
Yeah,
maturity and whatnot. So you're not alone in that.
yeah.
So what was so that was in Sydney? Is that right?
So yeah, a mix of Brisbane and Sydney.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. And then so you moved back, and then was that when you took on the role at Aurizon?
Yeah, so that was during the GFC. I
Yeah.
came back to Brisbane. Now, funnily enough, I was working at Macquarie. I could never understand why I didn't get made redundant. I would have been cheap to get rid of and expensive to keep.
Yeah.
Um, but I recognised that really the business that I was working in, although it was a great business, wasn't going to be doing anything new for quite a
Mm.
period of time, and that didn't seem particularly exciting to me. So I moved
Yeah.
back to Brisbane, where I'm from,
Yeah.
and I was just fortunate that when I was ready, the role at Aurizon, or what was back then QI National, came up,
Yeah.
which at the time was a pretty big thing.
Yeah. Nice. And then so what was the role that you came back to? What were you doing?
I can't remember what my role was, the role title was, but I was basically in the corporate treasury team.
Yep.
And for those who are, and maybe this predates a bunch of people watching
Sure.
this, but we went through basically a demerger. It
Okay.
was a government-owned corporation. We went through a
Yep.
demerger and then ran a dual track process. The mines were trying to buy the QI National business,
Mm.
and ultimately the state decided to float it.
Yep.
So just given my background in debt markets, I was there to basically put in place some debt facilities and credit ratings, as a part of the team.
Yeah. Right. How long were you with Aurizon for?
4 or 5 years. So I was there for about a little over a year prior to float, and then a couple of years post that.
Yeah, okay. And then so you were working on cross-border leases or something along those lines at the time.
Yeah,
What
so that
was?
was the yeah, so that was my first sort of thing that I needed to work on when I came in. The cross-border leases had been identified as a significant risk,
Yeah. Okay.
and so I spent the better part of 6 months restructuring cross-border leases,
Yeah. Okay.
which was technically interesting, but ultimately fairly useless in terms of skills acquired, but
Yeah.
just because of what's happened in the cross-border leasing space. In fact, it had um, legislation had changed in the US that basically
Right.
invalidated them 5 or 6 years before I was involved. So there was no more cross-border leases, just the wind down.
Yeah. Okay. So it still exists that now, or is it just a phased out?
Uh, yeah, they'll just be in the process of phasing them out. They're
Yeah.
all over the world. Cross-border
Yep.
leases. I'm sure some smart financial engineer has come up with the next version, and some
Yep.
tax authority is trying to figure out how to stop it right now. So
Yeah. No,
um,
fair enough. And then, so did you start up a business or something at one point?
Yeah, so I left Aurizon to start a business um, in basically because of my background in
Mm.
FX. We're basically reducing the cost for international students to pay
Okay,
their
right.
fees.
Yeah, yeah,
That was where it started, and it expanded
yeah.
into a bunch of other areas. So yeah, I kind of left a very stable job at Aurizon to go
Yeah,
and have a whirl.
yeah, cool. So how was the early days? What was that like?
I don't. I mean, 9 or 10 months of having doors slammed in your face, fundamentally, is, builds a bit of resilience. Um,
Yeah.
but then we launched a product based on conversations that we'd had with clients in the insurance space
Okay.
that went really well really quickly.
Okay.
And so that was good fun. And when you have your competitors trying to physically intimidate you at conferences, you're doing pretty well. So that was good times.
What are we talking? Like standover or
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah, pretty much. That was yeah.
what year was this?
That would have been like 2013, 2012,
Okay, so
2013.
not that long ago where that sort of stuff you get away with, right? That's
Yeah,
pretty.
I don't think there was a lot behind it, but he was anyway. Yeah, I mean it was a good learning curve, right? So
Yeah,
we went through and created an insurance platform that
cool.
materially improved and it's basically changed the market now and
Yeah, right.
for that particular insurance product. And I went and did all the commercial deals with the insurers, and they ranged from uh, uh, being told that'll never work
Mm.
to literally people laughing at me on the phone. That was a good one.
Yeah, yeah.
Right through to you only need one, and fortunately one of the insurers got on board,
Cool.
and we took it from there. And
Yeah,
that
right.
just exploded pretty quickly. Actually, that was good.
Yeah, right. How long were you there for?
I was there about a year. So my
Right.
wife gave me a year. I ran out of money and had to go back to work. It went well, but didn't go well fast enough, and it was too late. So
Yeah, right. Are they did that end up tracking on after you left?
yeah, the guys did a really great job of continuing to grow it into an international business, and it got bought out by the company that we modeled it on actually back
Yeah.
in 2012,
Okay.
maybe 18 months ago.
Yeah,
So
right.
um,
Fair enough.
yeah,
Good on
they
them.
did really well.
Yeah, nice. And then you took the role with Tatts after that.
Yeah, so I went in as group treasurer at Tatts. So when
Mm.
I'd moved back to Queensland from Sydney, my goal was and there wasn't a lot of science behind this,
Mm.
to become the treasurer of an ASX 200 company by the time I was 40.
Okay.
That was it. Yeah, as I said, not a lot of science behind it, but that was sort of something I was working towards,
Yep.
and that was Tats. So I was the group treasurer of a company that's just outside the ASX 50,
Yep.
it was a really really good time to be in that business. Robbie Cook had just come in as CEO,
Mm.
and the business had moved to Queensland from Victoria, um, and yeah, it was a really fun business to be a part of, and we did a lot of really really good things.
How was the feeling coming back into ASX land after spending a year in a startup and
Y-
at the other end of the scale? Was the job search itself pretty challenging? Like, how are you feeling throughout?
Yeah, probably I'm pretty anxious, I think,
Yeah.
given that I was running out of money, and uh, and I really kind of needed to find something. And Brisbane's not a huge market. I was
Sure.
really fortunate to get the role.
Mm.
Um, I, I wasn't going to get it.
Okay.
I think that was that's just part of history. Someone intervened
Yeah.
that I know sort of stepped in for me and made a case to the CFO,
Yeah. Right.
who gave me another interview. I must have performed pretty poorly in the first one,
Sure.
and the rest is kind of history from there.
How did you find out that someone intervened? Did they tell you, or the
The
CFO
CFO,
told
the
you?
CFO told me, yeah,
Yeah. Right.
yeah,
And did that?
which is really nice. They didn't have to do that,
Sure.
and yeah, look, it's I think the CFO at the time, Neil O'Connell, who I've gone on to work for a
Yeah.
second time, is probably pretty happy that he took the
Yeah,
second meeting.
yeah, for sure. You send them a box of favourites or something. And so that relationship piece, then, like, you must have impressed that person in another career or another time. Like, what sort of importance do you place on something like that, then?
Yeah, look, I guess I don't think about it a huge amount, right? Like,
Mm,
I just sort of have historically just gone on about my business,
yeah.
um, and done the best that I possibly could. Now, that person who did get involved was a banker,
Okay.
and to my mind, one of the best relationship bankers that I've come across. So
Okay. Wow.
I worked with him when I was at Aurizon. He
Mm,
was one of the funders, and the banks all put in significant amounts of debt into the Aurizon float, and so I'd worked with him quite a lot
okay.
through that period, and I guess I'd say it's a testament to him more than me, and his
Yeah.
I worked with a lot of people during that period at Aurizon,
Yeah.
and a few of them I still keep in contact with.
Yeah.
The vast majority of them, and they're relationship people. I couldn't tell you the name of. So you come across those people, I think, in this game a little bit,
Yep.
who are genuinely interested in you as a person, as much
Mm,
as they are interested in how much money they can make off you. And
sure.
they're the ones who will give you advice that is unbiased, or as little biased as possible.
Yeah.
So I think they're important to recognize those people who are genuinely interested in you as a person, and are trying to do the best by you, as opposed to the reams and reams of people who just see a big balance sheet and
Yeah.
plenty of net interest margin.
Yeah, I think that's the case for a lot of industries and a lot of roles, isn't it? Like, the
Mm.
relationship first people are the ones that get it back, get the karma back virtually down the line. So it's what goes around comes around type of thing.
Yep, yep.
Nice. And so, given you came from startup land through to ASX world again,
Mm.
was there anything specific that you took from your time with the new business into the new role?
Yeah, look, there was a couple of really big philosophies that I brought back in. The biggest one from the tech space that I really try and sort of embody as much as I
Mm,
can is just a willingness to share. So I'd realized like treasury is a discipline that where secrets can make you money, right? If you know
sure.
something that someone doesn't,
Yeah, yeah.
you can actually leverage that. Um,
Mm,
but when I came back in, I had this sort of just broad philosophy that I will tell anyone anything they want to know, providing they're
yep.
not Tabcorp, who is our biggest competitor,
Sure.
because my broad and as long as I'm not sort of breaching confidentiality
Yeah.
and all the rest of it, um,
Yeah.
uh, my broad thesis was, or thinking was, like, Treasury's not Tatts was a business, sold lottery tickets, right?
Mm,
The business wasn't going to win or lose based on what I was doing. And
yeah.
so, if I had something that I had to share, that someone had an interest in, then I would spend the time to help them, and that's been
Yeah.
really good for me. And I've tried to continue to embody that, and give people the time if they're interested. Everyone likes talking about things that where they have some level of expertise, right? I've
Yeah.
realized that, and it's really big in the technology space. And so I tried to bring that back into the finance space, where it's a little bit unusual.
Yeah.
And I think it's sort of broadly worked pretty well for me, and it makes me you know broadly sleep better at night, knowing that
Yeah.
I've helped a few people out. And I think this is we talk about networking, and some of my friends and colleagues have noted in the past that I have quite a good network,
Sure.
but I don't sort of network in the traditional sense. It's really
Mm,
just a sort of a compounding of helping people out over what
yeah.
is now a fairly extended period.
Mm,
And it's I like to think that I'm just adding a little bit of value to people,
yeah.
and they know if they call me, I'll help them if I can.
And then it pays off where they call in the CFO to get you the job.
Yeah. I guess that's
Yeah.
yeah. We'll see about that. But yeah, look, I do it with
Yeah.
absolutely no intention to get anything
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really doesn't bother me at all.
Mm.
I just like to be helpful.
Yeah. Nice. And so, how was it? How was your time at Tatts? What was it like?
Yeah, look, it was a really great period. Uh, one of the sort of core philosophies of the organization was to have fun, and Robbie was a great leader, and we generally had pretty good fun. From a technical point of view, I did some really good work. I did
Mm.
a bunch of novel things that was
Okay.
that sort of delivered quite a lot of value to the organization, which was great. And then ultimately ended up broadening my role towards the end of my period at Tatts, but sadly we also got taken over. So
Sure.
that
Sure.
sort of pretty well brought it to an end. Although I could have stayed on, but in the end it was the Tabcorp culture was not aligned with really what I
Yeah.
wanted to what
Yeah.
I sort of enjoyed working in, and recognized that, and decided to take my
Sure.
leave.
So there's a couple of points there. So that it's saying about Tats being a really fun environment. So what was it specifically? Like, talk me through what does that actually look like on a day to day?
Oh, look, I think, it was a business that was doing pretty well. So, there was plenty of social things
Mm.
in, uh, that the company invested in.
Hmm.
And it sort of was multi-layered, right? Like
Sure.
I had a leader who was in Neil, who was a great leader, very
Mm.
empathetic for a CFO. Had built a team that really was very collegiate,
Yep.
and so we all got along very well, socialized together, and then you sort of your business is entertainment, so there
Mm.
was always some sort of entertaining thing going on,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think it wasn't just words. So
Sure.
that the actual the culture of the organization was quite uh, people were nice to each other. They were good to each other,
Yep. Yep.
which is nice. You can have fun
Yeah.
on the tin, but if everyone's sort of beating down on each other, it's not much fun, is it? No matter how many social
Yeah.
parties you have.
Yeah. And you were saying the business was flying at the same time. So obviously that culture had a big play in that. But how do you think that translated materially?
That's a complex question to unpack. I think it certainly didn't hurt it,
Okay.
but I guess I have a broad belief of the real driver of value at Tats materially was its licenses.
Mm.
Having fun is helpful, but without the licenses, you're not making money. So um,
Sure. Yeah, fair enough.
that's a very CFO answer, though. So I appreciate
Sure.
that.
No, that's fine.
Quick one before we get back to it. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably already know that I recruit for senior finance professionals for high growth businesses. That's what I do outside of this show. My approach is built around storytelling. When I take on a search, I build a narrative around the business, who they are, what they're building, where they're going, and why that role matters. Before I reach out to a single candidate, I tell that story across multiple channels to my network of over 28,000 finance professionals in Australia, so that when I do start conversations, candidates already know who you are and there's a level of buy-in before I even contact them. So if you're a founder, CEO, or CFO that's thinking about a finance hire, even if it's early days, I'm always happy to chat. Whether that's a question, some free advice, or a sense check on what the market looks like. You can find me on LinkedIn or at storyrecruitment.com.au. All right, let's get back into it.
So you moved internally to that group finance GM role. So that was that your first like core accounting or core finance role? Because everything else was treasury and market. So how did you manage that? Was it easier than you anticipated? Do you have any challenges there? What was it like?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely challenges. But it was, I think the best. I realized really, really quickly
Mm.
that there was no chance. So just to give some context, my team went from 2 people to about 50 overnight,
Yeah.
and most of those areas I had nothing to do with
Yeah.
historically. So,
Yeah.
you work in treasury in the bank, you're behind a locked door. So the finance
Yeah.
people can't even get in, and I spent 5 years working at Bank of Queensland. I think I went out into the finance team maybe twice,
Okay.
because I just didn't need to,
Yeah. Yeah.
and had no real sort of drive to do it, um, and then uh, even through into corporate treasury, um, you don't sit with the AP and AR teams, and
Mm.
you sort of, you might be interested in sort of, what they do to the cash flow, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Um, and then I went from there to actually managing all of these people. And I was really, really fortunate to have some good leaders in the team,
Mm.
that were really helpful. But I realized really, really quickly that I was pretty well screwed without if the team didn't perform for me,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So because I couldn't just in Treasury, I could just jump in, and I built the whole thing, so
Yeah.
I could just jump in and do it. Whereas here, I had to really rely on the team, and that was, at some points, for someone like that at that level of my career, quite humbling. But it was also pretty liberating, because you realize pretty quickly that if you can't lead the team, then you're really stuck. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it was a bit of sink or swim.
No, sounds like it. So, what would be your advice to someone going into a similar scenario like that, where you're not a technical specialist in the teams that you're managing? And that doesn't have to be the case for core finance. That could be
Yeah.
for HR, legal, IT, etc. Like it's all similar.
Yeah, I mean, you have to rely on your people.
Mm.
You know, and it doesn't mean that you're not there for a reason, but
Yep.
you have to believe your people are going to do the best for you,
Yep.
are working in your best interests.
Mm.
And I guess my sort of broad philosophy, and I've sort of come into a few teams now post that, is to be humble enough to stand in front of your team really early and tell
Yeah.
them that you cannot succeed without them. Um, and then you've just got to figure out if they are actually working for you or not,
Yeah.
because unfortunately that's not always the case.
Yeah.
But I think just having the humility to realize that there are people who are smarter than you and your team, that know more about their area of expertise than you ever will, and that's
Yeah.
actually a good thing, not a bad thing. You don't want to know more than everybody else. You're just
Yeah.
really
No.
really
Fair
annoying
enough.
leader at that point.
And then you say that the acquisition happened and culture started to change dramatically. Is it anything specific you think did that impact performance at all, or was it more just a morale thing?
I don't know. Have a look at what's happened post
Sure.
acquisition. I couldn't tell you. I haven't watched it that closely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely impacted morale.
Mm.
But I think there's still, I guess they've split the businesses now.
Yep.
And Yeah, look, it's always going to impact performance over time.
Yep.
But I didn't really hang around. I recognized the culture that was coming in, and realized that it wasn't for me,
Yep.
and just I guess, without much of a plan, just decided that I'd move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. And then you took a bit of time off. I think you said.
Yep, yep.
How was that?
So that's an interesting one. It's a bit hard to do. They say the most addictive thing in the world is probably crack. Second most addictive thing is a weekly wage.
Sure.
And so yeah, look, I realized then that I was sort of 20 years into my career at that point, and I hadn't taken
Yeah.
more than 3 weeks off.
Mm.
And there's reasons for that, but
Sure.
I decided to take a bit of time off, had a bit of breathing space, and spent some time traveling, and uh, built some software with a friend of mine,
Nice.
and yeah, just enjoyed life a little bit. It was interesting. It was quite it made me quite anxious
Okay.
I don't know why. In
Yeah.
hindsight, I don't know why.
Sure.
I thought at some point that my skills were atrophying and I
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to add value.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh, and I realize now that the world just probably doesn't move that fast. I was only out for 8 or 9 months.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, looking back on it, do you regret taking the time off, or did it refresh you, or would you recommend others do the same?
I only regret not being more relaxed about it and
Yeah.
enjoying it more.
Sure.
Like to give some context, I consulted as well I actually made more money
Okay.
post than I was in my role
Yeah.
as a
Right.
consultant, and
Yeah.
but I don't know why I couldn't deal with it mentally. So
Sure.
I would, yeah, definitely recommend it. It was
Mm.
good for me. I did enjoy it. I
Mm.
did some interesting things with some
Sure.
interesting people,
Yeah.
and got
Cool.
to do a bit of travel,
Yeah.
which was
No.
also good fun.
Sounds like you stayed pretty busy then. It wasn't completely a holiday.
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I rented a house in Kyoto, and then
Oh, yeah, how was
found
that?
it. Yeah, it was good, and but I then found a co-working space to go and work out of every day. So,
Fair
it was
enough.
sort of same but different.
Yeah, yeah, nice, nice. And then so you came back, and then you took the role at BOQ.
Yeah, yeah. So I came back and I continued to sort of build the software out a little bit.
Mm,
And we implemented it at a quite a large organization,
mm,
and then it sort of came time for me to get back into the workforce, and the role at BOQ came up again through just connections, and this quite different. I sort of started my career. I spent a
mm.
big part of my career early at BOQ, but in
Yeah,
treasury. And
yeah,
as I said, I never came into finance. But
yeah.
we had BOQ had a CFO who was kind of um, on the sort of CEO rotation to
Mm,
broaden him out into the CFO role, sort of on the journey succession plan. And
sure.
he needed someone to run the finance team initially through half year, and I couldn't think of anything more complex or more challenging,
Sure.
so
Yeah,
I sort of thought I'd have a go at it.
yeah, nice. And so that was a good stint then.
Yeah, look, it was intense, right?
Yeah.
So, and look, to give some context, I took that role primarily, and I'm sure there's lots of listeners who have this, because I thought I got lucky at Tatts,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
I'd done pretty well. I think there's sort of plenty of things I can talk to that I was very, very proud of in my time at Tatts.
Mm,
But I had this sort of imposter syndrome that, like, maybe I did just get lucky, and it was
sure.
just because of the team,
Yeah.
and if I go somewhere else that I'm probably not as good as I think I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess my thinking with Bank of Queensland was I'll go back into what is probably one of the most complex finance tasks. And if I fail here, then I was right. And if I succeed, then I can probably carry on and
Yeah.
do okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was in quite an intense period.
Yeah.
They brought in the bear regime, and it was
Mm,
post the Royal Commission. So there was quite a lot going on, and it was pretty intense.
yeah. Cool. Did you prove yourself right?
Look, I like to think that I did okay. So
Nice. And then, so when did the CTM role come up?
the CTM role came up. I went in on that role as on a contract, and
Yeah.
towards the end of that contract, I'd had the contract extended, and then the CFO was talking to me about a permanent role, and I realized that banking really wasn't for me. And the CFO from Tatts, Neil O'Connell, became the CFO of CTM, and
Yeah.
he sort
Right.
of gave me a call and
Yeah.
asked if I wanted to come in really on a succession path through into the CFO role.
Yeah, cool.
and that was kind of August of 2019.
Yeah, right. That must have been pretty nice and pretty reassuring that someone rates you that highly to bring you out of the blue for it.
Yeah, I had a good relationship with Neil, and I'd kept in contact with him, and so uh, yeah, look, it's always nice for someone to tap you on the shoulder
Yeah,
and kind of make a role for you,
yeah,
and give you a bit of a path, which is pretty unusual. And I guess my my advice to all your listeners is take care of your own career, because people actually doing it for you is pretty rare.
yeah, for sure. So does that make it an easier with a soft landing like that, or does it make it harder with the expectation and pressure?
I didn't really think about it,
Okay.
honestly,
Yeah.
because I came into a fairly intense environment. We were a bit under attack from short sellers,
Yeah. Right.
and yeah, look, I just kind of got
Yeah.
on with what I needed to do. I
Yeah.
wasn't
Then
sort
when
of sitting there like in the corner, like patting myself on the back, saying I'm next. I'm going to give you the tip.
and then what was like 4 or 5 months later, COVID hit as well. So it wasn't necessarily easy running.
Yeah, it was about six. Yeah, it was about 5 months later we started to see it in the data, and 6 months later that it really started to fall apart. So yeah,
Yeah. Right.
we saw off the short sellers.
Yeah.
They kind of quietened down in
Mm.
February of 2020, and at that
Okay.
point we
Right.
were sort of started to really worry about what was going on
Yeah.
with travel,
When
particularly in
when you
Asia.
say the data, is it the data from a COVID perspective, the data from the business trends?
No, the data from a COVID perspective.
Yeah.
So what the giveaway was, or the where it all started was Chinese New Year travel to Australia, or out of Asia,
Right.
really fell off a cliff, and that
Okay.
was very unusual. And that was sort of where we started to think, oh, there's a problem here.
Yeah. Right. And so what do you do there then? Like what does that mean literally?
Well, it means that we lost 90% of our business in a month,
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
in terms of turnover. That's how it actually manifested itself in March,
Yeah.
um, March and April. Yeah, so you're really, at that point, trying to do what you can to ensure the business survives. And I guess for context, we're a little over 3,000, close to 3,500 people globally,
Yeah.
and fourth largest travel management company in the world. So there
So,
was a lot of moving parts,
yeah.
and a lot of very difficult decisions needed to be made.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so what did your role entail during that period? Because it must have just been full on.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I didn't probably have the experience that most people had during COVID, where they, made lots of money in the share market and got to walk with their kids every day and all this sort of
Yeah.
stuff. Like, it's just a pretty black period for me.
Yeah.
I worked long hours, 7 days a week for close to 3 months straight.
Mm.
And the first thing you got to do is protect your debt, because that's where you're going to fall over, right? If you get closed up by the banks, your equity holders are never going to call in and shut you down, but the
Yeah.
banks might. We were
Yeah.
very fortunate. We were very early to our banks as soon as we saw we had a problem. So, for those of you who are out there running treasury,
Mm.
we were really open with our banks. We went there with a plan.
Mm.
Um, we sought some feedback on the plan before we took it to the banks.
Yeah.
Interestingly, from that same banker who had left the bank, and was
Okay.
a consultant now, he is a consultant now. And
Yeah.
so um, we 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 sort of secured the debt. I think it was about the 7th of May 2020. At that point, the business is going to survive. We cut
Yeah.
costs pretty savagely. We were early. That was before JobKeeper. We let about
Right.
1,500 people go,
Yikes.
and
How
which is a
quickly?
lot. Which is a lot, like
Yeah.
really quickly.
Yeah.
And it was, and it was a very difficult time. There's no doubt
Mm.
about that. But I think that at the time it was, cutting 1,500 people is not something I'd recommend anyone do. And I guess it's all in context, right? 1,500 out of 3,500, or maybe it was a bit more than that.
Yeah.
but fundamentally, we were trying to ensure that the other close to 2,000 didn't lose their jobs as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, right. So
yeah.
how do you come to decisions like that? Because it's not something you can just make a snap decision on. It's something you, I guess, work through. So how do you get to that point?
Yeah, well, there's no playbook.
No,
We've all got risk management playbooks, but none of them sort of
sure.
really cover that. But look, we just, mechanically sort of sat in a room. There was three of us in a room trying to decide, how little or how much we should cut.
Mm.
Fundamentally with imperfect information. And I think
Yeah,
this is the reality that all executives face. There is no such thing as perfection. Sadly, you
yeah.
have the information that you have. It's likely
Mm.
biased. It's likely not complete. And it certainly isn't. It won't tell you everything about the future. And so we made
Yeah,
that decision, those decisions, and the MD, was I remember walking out of the room and him sort of turning around and saying, like, if we get this wrong, we're in real trouble. And we were
yeah,
we were we were ahead of everybody in terms of making sort of flighties came. They were still trying to figure out what was going on. After we'd cut people.
yeah, sure. And then what was the recovery like over the next few months to a year?
Well, that depends, and this gets difficult. It depends on how you define recovery, right? So
Yeah.
we'd stemmed the bleeding and we'd stopped our
Mm.
losses, and so we were actually making money, not much,
Okay.
but we weren't losing money.
Yep.
We had collected all of our receivables, so we had plenty of cash in the bank, and we had a
Mm.
runway forever. That was fine.
Sure.
Our share price recovered pretty quickly. And we did a big acquisition in the States of an organization that we would not have been able to buy had COVID not come.
Okay.
So that was really fortunate. That was a good acquisition.
Yeah.
But the challenge is that you're running two speeds, right? The share price is recovering and shareholders are happy. At the same time, you still got the foot on everyone's throat internally, and
Mm.
we're all
Mm.
working for reduced salaries, and there's people on part time where they were full time before, and so there is a bit of a challenge there of the sort of the internal versus external views and how well you think you're going.
Yeah.
And so from a shareholder point of view, we were going great.
Yeah.
Internally, there was plenty of noise about
Yeah.
why are we going to market and saying we're doing great when I'm still only working 20 hours a week.
Mm.
And they were very fair
Yeah.
sort of criticisms of us at the time. But we just, like I said, there was no playbook. We were just trying to do the best that we possibly could. And
Yep.
then we had the opposite problem through in sort of late 22 into early 23. We did another acquisition. That one wasn't quite as good. And then basically what happened is, because if you remember, it was like borders open, borders closed. It was, it was
Yeah.
Delta and all these sort of different strains,
Sure.
and everybody was putting stuff on and then taking them off, and we
Yeah.
just tried to stay fairly static. But then when things in early 23 really started to fly, and the sort of everybody realized it was broadly over here in
Mm.
Australia, we were growing sort of 20% month on month,
Wow.
which is just as difficult and complex
Yeah.
when you've got sort of lower staff. There's not a lot of staff at this point. We're sort of 3 years
Yeah.
into the crisis, with experience around, and we were just basically doing anything to try and service customers. It was that was
Yeah. Right.
put as much pressure on the business as the downturn.
Absolutely. And then put in with first CFO role as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What was that?
Yeah, look, yeah. So I became CFO in was it 21?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, it was again, you're just relying on your team and trying to do
Yeah.
the best that you can as with all the moving parts.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Nice.
yeah,
Very good. And then when you did move on to Tech One, coming into a much more stable environment, well, hopefully anyway. But what was that transition like? What did you take from it, having done it the first time to the second time as CFO?
Yeah. Look, there was some similarities and some differences. When I was talking to Tech One, some ways they were well ahead of CTM from a finance point of view. Some ways they were behind, and so you know, coming across, it was really in terms of I guess process was a bit different because I guess
Mm,
I'd been promoted internally at CTM, so I already kind of knew the business pretty well.
sure.
The people knew me and my immediate team,
Mm,
were really awesome. Where I came into Tech One as an outsider, but as an established CFO. So
mm,
maybe more expectation that
okay,
I can deliver immediately,
sure.
and just a slightly different environment as well in terms of um, you know at the time sort of a more domestically focused business um, and uh, and but your um, process is not entirely different, right?
Yeah,
Back to
yeah,
my point before, you need to rely on your people to deliver for you and deliver for the business because I'm one person and they're 100. So,
yeah, yeah.
they're much better placed to deliver.
And was there anything that you didn't anticipate coming into it, that having done it the first time? Sorry, was there anything that you came in that was a big surprise?
I wouldn't say there's a big surprise. I think obviously it's a different industry, but I think if there's anything that I've proven throughout my career is that finance people can be pretty agile in terms of
Mm,
changing industries. It didn't take too long to get up to speed with how the business
yeah,
works. We got sort of common investors, so that was helpful.
yeah,
But and I think it's just sort of different company, different culture, different
yeah,
um, you know um, different expectations, and just getting used to that and the cadence and the heartbeat of the company, and trying to fit in where you should and
yeah,
uh,
no,
and and deliver for the company. It's all.
yeah,
I had a question not long after I moved about handover,
oh, yeah.
and my kind of response to that was like, I think at this level you're just kind of expected to figure it out. If you can't, then you're probably not at the right level. So anyway,
How's business going? How's things looking over the next 12, 18 months?
yeah, look, we're incredibly optimistic about the next 12 or 18 months. I think the market sort of has gone a bit crazy with the SaaS apocalypse, but
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah,
we're sort of well ahead of the market in terms of rolling out our AI driven products,
yep,
and so we're incredibly optimistic. I think it's an exciting time to be in software.
yeah, for sure. And what do you think on that, the SaaS apocalypse stuff, with everyone able to create their own custom workflows or custom tools to their own personalized circumstances? Do you think that's going to have a bigger impact on software and SaaS as a whole?
I think it's more likely at the edges.
Yeah.
Uh, I- I guess, and there will be winners and losers here, without a
Mm,
doubt. From our perspective, I think we're pretty comfortable with where we sit with,
yep.
I guess just the strength of our offering and what we provide. We're
Mm,
not sort of we're not a Monday.com,
mm,
which is maybe a little bit more exposed than we are.
sure.
We do boring stuff where compliance matters,
Yeah.
which is good, but we're now actually doing it in with AI involved, and sort of weaved into the product. So we're doing it in a smart way. I think on the point of being able to build your own products.
Mm,
I've built a few
yep.
myself just to sort of play with the toys,
Yep.
and it's incredibly exciting. I actually
Yeah.
think that there's and I've written about this, that this really is the era for people with deep IP knowledge to be able to build
Yep.
products that never existed before, because you don't need to build it for if you're not spending $5 million in R&D, you don't
Yeah.
need to build it for 50,000 people. You can build it for 50, and it's still worth doing. So I'm optimistic about all the fun things that people are going to build.
For sure. And just because people can build it doesn't necessarily mean that they will either. They might just want something off the shelf that they know works and can trust it, and away they go. So
yeah. I mean, at the moment, and I'm sure it'll change over time, but at the moment, the first 80% is really easy. The last 20%, when you're getting into infrastructure and they're making it easier, but it helps to know a little bit about a little bit. So so I think it's that first version that your single prompt spits out looks pretty good, but it's not really production ready, right?
Definitely not. Well, thanks for your time, Cale. I think you've been great. Your approach to being calm during crisis management periods, I think, will be really, really interesting and valuable to a lot of the listeners. So, if anyone has any questions or wants to reach out, is that something you're open to?
Yeah, sure. Probably easiest to find me on LinkedIn. And like I said, I guess my philosophy doesn't change. If I can help you, I'll certainly try. And if I can't, I'll connect you with someone who can.
Very good. Well, yeah, thanks again for coming on the show.
No problem. Thanks, Tom. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the CFO Track. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with a friend. I'll see you next time.